else.
All right. Well, why don't we open the meeting and we can do the roll call to take the votes and things. And if you want to talk, if I don't see you raising your hand, speak up. Does that sound all right?
Works for me.
Okay. So we have a flag there, Randy.
We do.
And what we will now do is stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll open the meeting.
Hey.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
The United States of
America,
to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll open the meeting with a moment of silence. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being recorded and televised by the local cable company. Is there a motion to approve bill and payroll warrants?
So moved.
Is there a second? Yeah. Any discussion? All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
How many ayes did we hear? Okay. Is there a motion to accept correspondence in the read file?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
You need to do roll call.
Okay, we need to do a roll call. Brian?
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
Brian? Thank you. Dan?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Approval of the meeting minutes, open session March 10th, 2020. Is there a motion?
I'll motion.
Okay, Dan is motioning. Who seconds?
Right.
Brian seconds. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll go the other way this time. Randy?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Dan?
Abstain. I was absent.
Okay, and I'll vote yes. Town administrators report, the first thing on the agenda. Reason why Tim and Eric are here is one of the reasons why they're here is an update on COVID-19. This was an item that Justin asked to be added to the agenda tonight. Frank?
Okay, as you all know by now, the state has passed two emergency bills, Chapter 53 and Chapter 45, that affect our ability to manage and control when we meet and when we hold an election. More importantly, the town has been working at minimizing exposure of employees to the virus by working rotating staffs so that we have the minimum number of people necessary to operate in each office. All of the essential functions are being performed. We are experiencing some increase in expenses due to our need to take care of and maintain facilities. But all in all, I think the town has done pretty well, and all of its departments have made the effort to make this thing work. My only concern right now is the impact, well, one of my concerns is the impact that the virus is having on revenues, because eventually it's going to trickle down to us. We're expecting to see perhaps a 10% reduction in local aid because lottery tickets aren't being purchased. The sales tax is down, our meals tax are down. So we're going to have to take a look at that as we move forward in our budgeting and planning. It's been stressful for a lot of people. We've had, to my knowledge, no employee has tested positive for COVID, but we have had family members who have. And we've managed those situations as well to minimize exposure. And all in all, I think the town's doing a pretty good job on it.
Okay,
From the Board of Health perspective, I think you should be commended for being proactive rather than waiting until things started spreading. You've done an outstanding job, Frank, really.
Well, everyone has. I mean, we've all contributed. Eric and your group have been very effective in handling this. The fire department and police department have really done a great job keeping a handle on things. So, you know, I don't want it to be an applaud fest, but everybody should be recognized for the operations they've been maintaining.
Frank, you might want to mention, and maybe Tim or Eric wants to chime in too, on how this is to refresh people's memory as to how the citizens can keep up to date on COVID-19.
That's a good point. We do have links on the website to current information, which is coming out almost daily. Certainly, the COVID has kind of cramped our style in terms of meeting and being available to the public, but the offices of staff, people can reach out by phone or email to pretty much any department, and we will continue to post information as it becomes available, and just stay tuned.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or anything they want to say? Does that handle what you wanted to handle, Justin? By that report?
Yeah, it does. I just thought we brushed past it in our last meeting, and it deserved a little bit more attention.
Okay.
Carl, I do have one question, Brian. I just happened to be out today. I had to go to the doctor, and I rode by the park, and Jesus, it's an awful lot of people out there. And, you know, I could see that they were somewhat trying to distance themselves, and it was a beautiful day, probably the nicest day we've had so far. But I don't know if Eric or Frank can talk about this with the stay-at-home kind of a scenario that everybody's been under. And I don't recall our first notice to the folks at home about staying out of public places. Did that include the parks?
No, no,
or,
Brian, it did not. The restriction was placed on the playground area, the basketball court, the hoops, anything that encouraged close personal contact.
Right.
The police are aware. The department is very aware of this. They are making hourly passes through the park. And if they see people gathering in what appears to be in conflict with social distancing, then they're encouraging them to move on. I think as you see better weather, people who are all pent up about being indoors all this time are going to look for ways to get out. I know my son and his family walk 3 miles a day just to get some air and keep an eye on things. And that's a group of 7, but they all stay together. So maybe that's what we're seeing.
And that's pretty much what I saw was people walking for exercise, maybe jogging or walking their dogs. So to me, that I guess does cover the separation. And I understand that there's cabin fever going on, but I just didn't know if that was covered in our first notice. But that's good. Thank you.
Well,
Right, we've actually had a discussion about whether or not to close the park. And our intention is to not have to close the park. We're hoping that people will use social distancing, wearing masks, cleaning up after their pets. We're hoping people are going to step up to the plate and do the right thing versus us having to step in and say, no, you can't do this. That's our whole goal, is to just get people on board with what the requirements of this virus are going to be and have everybody move along those directions.
Carl, another thing is when this meeting is complete, in following what I expect will be a couple of votes, I'll be planning and making a townwide call out to update people on a couple of decisions that are made and to remind them of the safety protocols. Again, we have, for the most part, seen most people being diligent in attempting to keep their separation appropriate.
Well, it should be clear to everybody that that's super important at this particular time, and it also should be clear to anybody that it's a great time to be a dog because the dogs are getting more attention than anyone, unless they like it when their people leave and they can sleep all day. But anyway, it's a dog's life right now. Related to the
other thing, Carl, if you don't mind, one other thing while we're in that particular vein of thought, if you do happen to have to go out and you need to get some food, please patronize the local restaurants that are doing takeout in this town and the convenience stores, the gas stations that are trying to survive and stay open because they are somewhat essential. We need to make sure that we keep our Whitman businesses alive.
Do the best we can. Connected to this, Frank, the update on COVID-19, we might want to get into what's going to happen with town meeting and the town election at this time.
As you know, the statutes I just referred to give the town fathers the ability to change what is normally a rigid schedule for meetings and elections. Under the current statute, a town may reschedule a town meeting, which right now is scheduled for May 4th, for up to 30 days through the town moderator, who will make that decision whether or not to extend the meeting after consulting with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. There is also a provision to make a second extension if the 30 days are not sufficient to bring us where we need to be to hold the town meeting. Following that, there is also a provision to reschedule the town election, which is currently scheduled for May, is it 16th, 18th? That may also be rescheduled, but based on current law, must occur by June 30th. So the discussion, I guess, needs to be how we feel about our ability to hold the town meeting on May 4th. Most of the towns around us have rescheduled their meetings. And it would seem to me that we're probably not going to be ready to hold the town meeting physically on May 4th. So
what you mean by that is that it won't be safe for us to hold a town meeting on May 4th.
correct.
Because of the coronavirus, because of keeping distance. That's less than a month away. And we're not near the point, I don't think, when we want to ask 100 people to file into a closed area. That's my feeling anyway.
I don't think you get them.
Our town clerk has been really helpful lately, giving us information about elections that have been postponed, about the rules for doing this. And I think what I'd like to entertain right now, as far as the election is concerned, is a motion by the board to postpone the election. Not the town meeting, because we'll be talking to Mike Seeley about that, but to postpone the election until what time? To postpone the election. We could do it the last Saturday in June would be the 27th. We could name a date. And then if we have to change that later on, we could, if it still isn't safe to appear at a meeting. And then we'd ask Frank, the motion would also ask Frank to consult with the town clerk about doing so. Does that make, someone want to make the motion so we can talk about it?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Brian, second. Discussion.
I think from a Board of Health perspective, as well as speaking with the Chief of Police and Fire, I think we're all in agreement that the less social contact, the better. I don't think there's anything pressing on the agenda that would change the town of Whitman if we delayed this. So I think it would be in everyone's best interest, rather than wait to see what Wisconsin comes up with from doing their election. I think we should be proactive and not wait to see the results of that.
So Eric, you think from the Board of Health's point of view, it's a wise thing to postpone the election?
Absolutely. We've already closed the town hall to any frivolous traffic. And I think that delaying the election would be the most appropriate thing from a health standpoint.
And Tim, good to see you back, Tim. Do you agree with that? Chief Greno?
He's been having audio difficulties. I'm not sure what's
Oh,
going on
okay,
there.
okay.
But that's
Okay.
I think
Would anyone else like to chime in?
I would like to. Can you,
Isn't Dawn Volley here online?
Yeah, she's there.
Yeah, she may have some input.
can you hear me or?
Yeah.
We can, John.
Okay, good. So you can actually postpone the election tonight without a date. So just to postpone it and then see how things go and then do a date later. The latest date that you could call for an election would be June 9th, which is 20 days prior to June 30th.
Right.
So you have to give 20 days notice of the election so that I can have a voter registration and things like that. So technically, the last day that you would have to schedule an election for June 30th, which would be the last day you could have it, June 9th would fall on a Tuesday. Does that make sense?
Right, it does. What is more convenient for you, to have a date that you're looking at, or to have us leave it open until the 9th of June?
I mean, you can go week by week. So I'm going to print the ballots. I'm going to go forward. We have candidates. We have a full slate. We have 3 races. So that none of that's a problem. The only thing that would be posting the warrant, and that's 7 days before. And then the other thing is, I believe it's 7 days. Goodness gracious! But I do have to have a voter registration, and they changed that to 10 days before, and you have to call the election 20 days before. So like I said, June 9th, to have an election on June 30th would be the last day you could call, but you could call it on June 1st to have it on June 20th. You know, you
Right.
just give a 20-day.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in the interest of
Thanks, Tom.
giving maximum flexibility, may I suggest that the motion simply be to postpone the election, and then we can address it as time moves on.
Okay. Whoever made the motion and seconded it, will you agree to that?
Yes, I
Yes.
will. I'll make
Okay.
that motion. I'll rescind my first motion and make that motion that Frank stated.
I just have a question on that.
Yes.
If we don't set a date, will that impact ability to ask for absentee ballots, since that's now an available option to some people or more people?
So the answer to that is I'm going to print the ballots with the May 16th date on them. I'm going to print absentee ballots. I already have the ballot out to the vendor to be printed, because that doesn't change. So I'm highly recommending that people start now to early vote. It's on the town website. If you look under the news feed, I'm going to, I was kind of waiting till tonight. I'm going to push it out there. It's a municipal early voting form. It's not absentee and just, and absentee is totally different. That's for 3 reasons. So what the state has done is they've allowed early voting by mail. Get the applications into me. You can download them from the Secretary of Commonwealth's website. You can fax them to me, email them to me, get them to me now. And then whenever the election is, even if I send you a ballot now, the law has allowed for that ballot to be cast whenever we decide to have the election. So even though the ballot says the 16th, that ballot will be cast when the board votes to have the election. And the other thing is, some ballot, like if I run out of, I'm going to print so many early voting ballots, and if I run out of early voting ballots, I can mail you absentee ballots. So people should not fret over those types of things, because they've allowed for a lot of leeway with this election, because a lot of people already had their ballots printed. So they're sending out some ballots that say official ballots that you would mail on that day. I mean, that you would vote that day in person and things like that. So there's a lot of leeway. You can also, one other important thing for people who do the early voting by mail or the absentee voting by mail, because we still have some people that are absentee. We have some college students that we are going to reach out to once you guys have made your decision, because I'm sure they're now home, that we'll have to change where we mail the ballots to. Anyways, and I totally lost track of what I was saying, but that's okay. But your ballots will, you can track them on the Secretary of the Commonwealth site. It'll say when we got your application, it will say when we mailed the ballot to you, and it'll say when we got the ballot back. So if you see anything that's funny on the Secretary of State, the Commonwealth's website, it says, well, I mailed the application a week ago, how come they haven't gotten it? Call our office. We're there to answer. We'll mail out applications if you don't have a printer. I mean, we'll do anything. I'd even put them in public locations, but we can't go to public location places. So, but like I said, I want the board, as well as anybody listening, to really push the early voting by mail, municipal early voting, and the paperwork's out there. Like I said, we really, even to your family and your folks, because I don't want anybody in town hall. Even on June 30th, I think that, we could still potentially be in a situation, where we don't want people in that building. So,
Yeah, I think that the wisdom is that it's going to last longer than the month of June. So, the motion on the floor is to have to postpone the election and work out the details later.
And just did one other point to that. Chapter 45 recognizes that ballots already exist, and regardless of when they're cast, they will be counted when the election occurs.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, I was just checking.
It should probably be noted too that two of us here are up for re-election, and that when we vote on this, we're voting on it to preserve the safety and the welfare of the citizens of the town, and not for any other reason.
not for political gain. That's right, Carl. Dr. Kowalski, you are correct.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of questions. Since this is going to be pushed down the road, just for informational purposes, in case anybody's listening, do then we now let more people bring in signatures because we've delayed it and moved it down the road? And
no, I don't believe. I think I read that those deadlines are real deadlines.
They're fixed.
The only deadlines that are going to change are the voter registration deadline, and the campaign and finance reports will have to be due because of the way it's languaged, 8 days before or 30 days after. So we'll reach out to the candidates and let them know when their reports are due, because those dates will change. But other than that, nothing changes.
Yeah, in other words, the ballot is set.
Ballot is set because, for instance, we have several candidates for selectmen and several more for school committee, and nobody's been able to hear anybody in any of those races, and now you're going to vote some by absentee before you've even heard a word out of any of these people. So I think it's kind of problematic for the citizens to make a valued choice when no one's heard from anybody.
Well, they can do political mailings. They could do. There's lots of the Secretary of State's office.
These are difficult times, right?
Right. No, I agree, but there are options for people.
They do cable shows.
Correct.
I think the two candidates in here should probably reach out to WACA and
Yeah.
think about doing a Zoom forum or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we any other questions or concerns? So those in favor, I'm going to call a roll call. Those in favor of postponing the election until to be announced date. Randy?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Okay, the second thing we need to deal with will actually be the way I understand it, would be our advice to the moderator and let him know what the Board of Selectmen thinks about postponing the town meeting. Frank, do you want to introduce that?
Yes,
And then Mike, you can chime in.
at this point, the selectmen process part in this is to make a recommendation to the town moderator to delay or postpone the town meeting to a date certain. So at this point, we can go out 30 days. Once we've done that, the moderator can designate 30 days. Once that's done, the moderator can then extend it additional time if necessary. And it should be pointed out that if we request that he postpone the town meeting for 30 days, it is with the expectation that in all likelihood we'll be seeking another extension, because I don't think anyone pretty much expects this to be over
By
by
the
June
first week of
7th.
June, right?
June 1st.
Okay, is there a motion then to advise the moderator that we would like him to use his power to postpone the election for 30 days?
I'll make
I
that
mean, not the
motion.
election, the town meeting for 30 days.
I'll make that
Second.
motion.
Is there a second? Brian, do you second it?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, Kyle. If in fact, we postpone it and it's past June 30th, we're into the new fiscal year, that means the town runs on a 1/12 budget. Is that the proper procedure?
Yes, it is, except the language that dictates that says that if you do not have a town meeting by June 30th, you may, with the approval of the Department of Revenue, seek a 1/12 budget, which shall be not less than 1/12 of last year's budget. So if you're anticipating an increase in revenue, example, the 2.5% that it goes up, that can be utilized in planning a 1/12 budget, but it has to be established and then has to be requested of the Department of Revenue to approve that 1/12 budget.
How will
Anyone
it,
else?
how will
Dan,
that
do you have
affect-
other questions?
Huh?
Dan, did you have other questions?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Frank, on a 1/12 budget, how does that affect the departments on last year's numbers? But the fact is, the money that, we haven't approved any monies. So that means that, if we're still in a union contract, are raises given out? Or
No.
what? I mean, if
On
you
a
want-
1/12 budget plan, unless, if you have a collective bargaining agreement, unless that agreement is signed by the union and by the Board of Selectmen and approved by town meeting, there's no change.
Right, but we're not having a town meeting to approve the new fiscal budget.
That's right.
The new rates.
So there would be no changes
Okay,
to those employee payrolls.
until we have a new town meeting, until we have a town meeting. Okay,
Yeah, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. What's really on the table right now is the moderator having the decision to postpone town meeting because of a public safety concern, which overrides all of this, the talk of budgets and
Is there a date certain?
safety of the citizens of the town.
Is there a date certain that you have, Frank, for that? Was it 30 days from the
I
4th?
believe it would be June 7th.
I think June 1st is the
No.
furthest Monday within the 30
No,
days window.
it's from, the date to extend it is from the current scheduled date. So.
And our current scheduled date is
I'm
March
sorry.
4th. I mean, it's the
It's
4th.
May 4th, so it would be June 5th, Mike?
June 3rd, I believe, is 30 days.
Okay, June 3rd.
Okay.
But that's not hard, that's not cast in stone.
Right, that's just a postponement, and then we'll probably be revisiting it again.
Okay, so the motion is to postpone it, is to advise the moderator that we would like to have the town meeting postponed to June 3rd. That clear? Those of you guys who made the motion.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Mike Sealy, are you still around?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I might. My only consideration is a purely personal one. I'm scheduled to be out of town on June 3rd. That's assuming that I'm able to go anywhere at that time. That's the only consideration. And if we needed to revisit this issue prior to that, assuming that the state of emergency is still in effect, we could certainly do that late May at some point, and
Fine.
perhaps postpone further if that works.
Fine. That works for me. If it worked for you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The expectation is to have it on June 3rd. I think it's to push it out as far as we can.
Right. Just
Exactly.
there's so much
Exactly.
uncertainty surrounding the situation that I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of giving that advice to the moderator?
Roll call?
Roll call, Randy,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I'll vote
Yes.
yes.
So that's our
Is there anything else you-
recommendation to Mike.
Yes, I'd like to get some input from the Board of Health and from the public safety officials about your feelings about postponing town meeting, and if doing it on May 4th is a safe thing to do or not.
Well, I think this is almost a no-brainer, Mike, to be honest with you. They're trying in Wisconsin, and I have a feeling when we see the numbers come out on this, it's just not going to be a positive event for them. There's nothing that's going to change the town of Whitman if we have this meeting versus if we don't have this meeting. I think in the interest of safety and in the interest of public health, that the best thing we can do is delay this until this whole shenanigans clears, because it's affecting everyone. We've had a great working relationship with police and fire, or fire and police, whichever one comes first. We've had an awesome team effort here at trying to mitigate any circumstances. And I've spoken with fire, I've spoken with police. We're all in agreement that this is in the best interest of the town at this time to delay.
Dr. Kowalski, is my microphone working now?
Yes, it is.
Oh, look at that. Magic.
Would you like to say something, Tim?
No, I'm all set. No, I totally agree with Mr. Jubit and with Frank. We've come this far. Things are rough in town. I don't think a May 4th date would even be approachable right now for us to have a large gathering. It's just not a safe thing to do.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, so hearing nothing else, all those in favor of the motion? Oh, did we do that already?
Yep.
Did we vote already?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Mike
fine.
was looking for feedback.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Well,
Okay.
I would certainly concur with the recommendation of the selectmen and with the Board of Health and with the chief that we should postpone this for 30 days.
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mike.
Mike.
I would imagine that would be a 7:30 start time in town hall, at least at this point, just for a matter of formality.
Yes.
Sure.
Then we'll make it.
7:30 is fine.
We'll make it then for June 3rd at 7:30 at town hall.
Right.
Date and time certain. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Frank, do you have anything
Certain,
else
I don't
on the
know,
town
but-
minute? Frank, do you have anything else on the town administrator's report?
No.
Dr. Kowalski, if you
Well,
want to
I'm
revisit.
sorry. Yes, I do have one other thing. I was going to do it at the end, but I should do it now. There was a inquiry from a citizen who had a concern that we're meeting electronically, but there's no opportunity for residents or citizens to participate in this meeting format. And I'd just like to respond to that concern, because it was framed in a way that perhaps implies that we're not seeking participation by citizens. It isn't really a question of willingness to invite public participation, but rather practicality. Open electronic meetings allow anonymous drop-ins who have created disruptions in both vulgar and inappropriate comments at other meetings being held in this format, as well as difficulty in focusing on an agenda when you have a large number of people gathering electronically. It's extremely difficult to control. The emergency regulation allowing this listen-only meeting format anticipated those issues. Our agenda is published in advance of the meeting. Public has an opportunity to review it, and if they're interested in providing comments or data to the selectmen, I encourage them to reach out to us by calling the office at 781-618-9701 or sending email to info@whitman-ma.gov, and that information will be shared with the Board of Selectmen prior to their meeting.
Okay. Excellent, Frank. Was that the last thing in your report? Because that is kind of a nice segue to your report on the budget review. From
yes,
that.
It is.
Our first item is non-mandated busing, and when Dawn Byers of the school committee saw that on the agenda, she called me. Well, she called me. I think it was last night, and she had some questions about non-mandated busing, and she had some viewpoints that I didn't share with her at the time. I didn't agree with her at the time, because I've had a long-standing attitude about non-mandated busing being arising out of a town meeting vote rather than out of government. But this morning she took the time to send a really well-researched and thoughtful essay on non-mandated busing. And I forwarded to the rest of the selectmen, and I encourage you to look at it when we eventually get to that issue, either at town meeting or in our budget deliberations. And I think it's a good example of the way you can interact with us during these troubled times when communication is difficult. But non-mandated busing, Frank, was on the agenda.
Right. The information that Dawn provided certainly had some well thought out ideas on how money could be used to better serve the community where we're operating basically a couple of empty buses every day. I think that it would be appropriate to pass this information around and to perhaps provide feedback to the Finance Committee and post the information publicly so we can invite comment and support for this to see where we really are. I mean, I have, like you, Carl, I always felt that the non-mandated busing provided a means for families where both parents work to ensure that the kids get off to school. But it seems like today it's a different issue. And I think it merits more consideration.
Right, she's actually turning my mind, not completely around yet, but having read what she had written, I'm really giving it serious thought to some of her suggestions. But I would encourage the rest of you guys to look it over carefully before we actually bring it up for funding or non-funding at town meeting time and in budget deliberations. Unless somebody would like to say something about it now.
I would, Carl. Non-mandated busing. I think it's something that we do have to look at, but the half-empty buses or fewer of the empty buses is because the students are either taking their bikes to school, or their parents are driving them, or whatever. But down the line, that may not be the case. And do we need a seat for every registered child that's in a school system, that they have a seat there for them? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think before we really discuss it, we should know the total rules and regulations of and the mandates of having non-mandated busing. Do we need a seat for every child, whether they take it or not? I mean, I don't know. That's just one question I have.
Okay, fine. It's something we can take up later on.
Yep.
Anything else? Anything else on that issue?
I think Justin had something, Kyle.
Yeah, if I can just jump
Justin.
in. This is something that's come up the last couple of years at the Finance Committee. I think they brought it up in our joint meeting last year with them.
Right.
It just comes down to how we want to best allocate our resources to the schools. And Don Byers brings up some really valuable information, whether we want to look at an opt-out, a pay-to-ride like other towns have done, or include some kind of a hardship waiver for students that can't afford to pay to ride. But it just becomes, last year we cut positions at the schools and still completely funded non-mandated busing. So it's just a question of what decisions we're making to send money to the schools.
Yeah, priority.
Yes, Randy.
Given our current circumstances, I'm afraid that all of it, talking about implementing a charge for now busing, we have a lot of people out of work right now, that it could be a time that we would appear to be slightly tone deaf by putting another charge on families when they, it's probably a year where that money is not going to be as needed as it was in previous budget cycles, where we may have been able to use it slightly in a better way. But I think with the budget work we've done, we've given ourselves that leeway, and we may want to think about letting families get back on their feet before we implement another charge.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Good point.
I just want to add in that the school committee brought this up at one of their earlier meetings in this budget cycle, and the superintendent didn't believe it could be implemented over the summer. He thought there would be a phase in. So starting the discussion now could impact 2021 to 2022 school year.
Okay. Frank, anything else on non-mandated busing?
I think it pretty well spells out the issues. I'd like to.
I think what you said earlier, Frank, is important, is to get the issue aired and to allow people to chime in.
Yeah,
think about it and chime in.
I'm going to publish that information on the web and invite discussion by people and make it clear. I think Randy makes an excellent point that now is not the time we want to start adding incremental charges where people are struggling just to get by. But we ought to have a clear path ahead to what we're going to do with it.
Good.
And I think also the comment about having more services for people would play into that as well.
Okay, very good. How's the progress on the current budget, Frank?
I met electronically with the Finance Committee before this meeting. We are analyzing the budget right now. There's a few articles that we need to clean up to have a kind of ready to review warrant. But my biggest concern right now is fiscal 22. The money that we have sufficient funding to meet our budget demands right now. We may have to relook at some of the decisions or the indications that we've made about funding for salaries and positions, given the fact that revenues are going to be down significantly at the state level, and we're going to see reductions in aid, particularly our cherry sheet and in our local receipts for excise tax and other things. We generally perform better than average, even in bad times, but it's going to have a financial impact on us. So we really need to take a second look at that. And that's what the Finance Committee agreed we'd be doing over the next couple of weeks. I think I'd like to work up some numbers and then meet with the Board of Selectmen to talk about strategy as it applies to this.
So that would be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
This is around the time of year that we would normally have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee. Are we planning on putting one of those together electronically as well?
Hopefully. They're meeting, we're both scheduled to meet in 2 weeks. I don't think we're ready to meet jointly at that point, but we should be able to meet following that meeting.
Okay, let's arrange that then. Anything else on anything else, Frank?
Just quickly check my notes. No, for now we should be pretty set.
Okay. Under new business, act on license renewals for the following license holders for the period May 1st, 2020 through April 30th, 2021, subject to the submission of renewed paperwork, renewal fees, and current tax status. And we have a list of full fuel storage licenses, junk collector licenses, and junk dealers licenses. Is there a motion to
I'll make that motion.
act on that? Is there a second? Are there any questions?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor then? Brian?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. I'm going to have to ask you guys to do a favor for me. I'm housebound because of medication that I take. I have almost no immunity to anything. So I can't actually go into the office and sign these things. So we need at least 3 of you to come in at some point and sign them, unless it's okay for us to authorize Frank to sign it for us. And I haven't received an answer for that question yet. You know, Frank?
You're talking about warrants now?
No, I'm talking about the licenses.
Oh,
Now,
the clerk at least would have to sign those.
I already did, I think.
but I
Okay.
mean, all the licenses,
But if at least 3 of you can get there, then help me out. It'll make me feel better anyway.
Right.
We got you.
Okay, that takes care of that. The next item on the agenda is to act on the request of Michael Ganchard on behalf of Whitman and Hanson Dollars for Scholars to erect a fundraising thermometer on the front lawn of Town Hall from mid-April through the end of May.
Tough time for Mike.
yeah.
Pardon?
This is a tough time for Mike to be putting that up, but we do it every year.
I know.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, there
I'll
is a
make that
motion.
motion. I'll
Okay,
make that.
Dan does. Is there a second?
Second.
Brian seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor? Brian?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Thank you, Randy, and I'll vote yes. Next item on the agenda is to act on the request of the town clerk to appoint checkers for the May 4th, 2020. That would have to be adjusted to the whenever 2020. The annual special town meeting as outlined in a memo dated March 26, 2020. Is
I'll make that motion.
there a second?
Second. I do have a
So
question.
what we're doing is we're voting for those people to be checkers whenever we do get to a town meeting.
I do have one question, kind of related. It's for Dawn. I've had a few of the candidates ask me, since we've extended the election, is what happens to the term? Is that term just extended until we have the election, or are they in limbo? How does that work?
So whoever is in the position now stays in the position until the election. So if you're a seated selectman, you stay seated in that seat until the election happens. And that's basically how it works. So school committee members continue on as school committee members. We have 3 races. We have an assessor race, we have a selectman race, and a school committee race. And then we have no candidate for the Board of Health. So
Oh, he was out.
other than that, it's just been no contested races, but you would continue on in your seat that you were elected for.
Excellent.
Actually, the motion that we're dealing with deals with town meeting.
Right.
It's not dealing with elections.
Okay.
Any questions on the checkers? All those in favor was, okay, Brian,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
yes, and I'll say yes too. Now, the last item on the agenda is signature on warrants, Frank?
Yes, this is something we discussed a few years ago, which was a provision of the Municipal Relief Act. It allowed the board to designate a selectman to sign warrants. And if they had made that designation, that selectman would also be responsible to report to the board at its next meeting as to those warrants that were signed. Given this situation that exists now, I thought it might be appropriate to ask the question if the board would like to consider designating one signer. To accommodate the information piece, I can always have a second warrant prepared in a PDF format that can be emailed so everyone can view the warrant payments and determine if they have any questions. Or we can continue as is and make the best of it.
Okay, people, what do you think?
I personally feel that we stay the way we are. I'm always in there. Justin's always in there. Randy Bopp's in there. And I know you can't go, Kyle, but Brian's in there. I think we can get 3 signatures.
I just we may want to authorize the ability to do that just in case one or two of us ends up sick or quarantined.
Good point, Justin. Would anyone like to volunteer to be the signee?
I have a question. If somebody volunteers,
Since you're always there, Dan.
Huh? I'm always there.
Since you're always there, Dan.
If I go and I sign it, but if Justin comes in, he can also sign them, right? And
That is
Randy,
correct.
right?
It doesn't preclude 3 signatures. It simply allows a warrant to be processed with only 1 signature.
Right, and I think
of a person that we designate.
Right. If I'm the person that you decide to designate, and I'll go in there, I don't think that warrant should be, as soon as I sign it, brought upstairs. I think it should be left at the latest point so that other selectmen, if they do come in to sign it, they can see the warrant and read it.
Good. That sounds fine. In other words, the timing would stay the same.
Right.
But if there's an emergency, you're the one that's going to sign it.
Right. Okay.
If the rest of us cash in.
I have a question. Can we make this a temporary designation under the circumstances where we can revisit it at another time?
You can move to make that authorization with a sunset date.
Can we set it to the duration of the state of emergency?
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'd be more inclined to that.
Okay, I like Justin's addition to that.
Yeah.
So it's a motion to designate Dan as the lone signer if it's necessary until the emergency is lifted.
I'll make that motion, Kyle.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Dan will second it. Any further discussion? Brian?
Yes.
Dan?
Actually, I'd like to jump in maybe afterwards, but would it make sense to add an alternate as well?
Would you like to be the alternate?
The statute only provided for 1.
Okay.
I think we question that.
Okay,
And the
good.
response I got from the DOR was only 1 person.
Right, and if something
Thanks
happens,
for jumping in, Justin.
right, if something happens to me, that means that we'll have to just revisit it again and appoint somebody else. That's all.
Right.
Okay, that was my concern.
So far you have 2 votes. Randy,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
and I'll say yes. That clears the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? All those in favor can vote by clicking off their laptops.
The ayes have it.
Thank you very much, guys. It was It's a little awkward doing it this way, but I think it worked out okay.